ID5 myth-busting video series. Today we're going to talk about authenticated audiences, and we'll try to understand if only people who have logged in can be marketed to, right? What are the compliance rules? The myth or the reality is what we're going to discuss with my guest today, Ben Barokas.
Thank you, Matthew.
AdTech OG turned privacy expert since you launched Sourcepoint. When was that again?
Almost 9 years ago. So
Okay.
we started Sourcepoint at the end of 2015. Coming out of Google, it was important for me to create additional transparency between the user, the publisher, and the advertising ecosystem. And having that conversation with the user on behalf of publishers, we thought was the way to go. And then came GDPR, and then came CCPA, and then came the additional 16 state laws that have been passed and been enacted
in the
and
US.
so in the United States. So we have all across Europe, all across the United States, as well as places like South Korea and Brazil, et cetera.
Yeah. So transparency is really, I think, where we're going to start, because there is a bit of a myth circulating in industry that to be compliant with regulation, you need people to log in, otherwise you cannot recognize them, you can identify them, right? And I want to get your take on this. What does the regulation say?
No, the regulation says that you need to have clear, transparent consent. It does not say that you have to log in. So it is important that you can provide advertising that is customized and personalized to the user without having to collect their email, without having to collect their phone number, without having to collect a personal identifier. That said, you can get to different levels of addressability if
more
you
data
have
you have,
authentication.
yeah,
So that's especially if you're looking at the zero-party data and the first-party data, things that you ask for or things that the user volunteers, you can have different levels of consent. But certainly it's not necessary to provide login in order to have customized and personalized behavioral targeted advertising.
So how do you have that conversation with the publishers and the brand that you work with? How do you take them on this kind of scale of interaction with their visitors, with their customers, right? How do they get started, and what are the different levels? Is it a product segmentation strategy basically that you're encouraging them to have?
I think it's an evolution of a conversation that publishers have with their users, and not only publishers but all enterprises. If you look at brands and marketers, they're also needing to collect data from their users in order to create a better experience,
Yep.
right? So across the ecosystem, enterprises need to have conversations with their users around what data they can collect and then who they can share that data in order to provide them with value. So on the publisher side of the equation, the value exchange becomes, if you give me more data, I can give you information that's more tailored to you, whether that is content, whether that is utility, whether that is marketing messages. Usually it's all three. Mm-hmm. So the more data you give me, the more I can provide you with greater utility.
Yeah.
But that conversation has to evolve. It's one thing about having a cookie banner that just says accept all, reject all, modify. It's something else having a true communication with the user around, we want to provide you with the best digital experience possible. In order to have that conversation and in order to tailor that experience, we need your data.
Yep.
And so
we need your consent.
Correct.
First.
100% consent.
And then within different levels of
It's about
depth.
choice,
Yep.
right? It's about choice. It's about what are those preferences overall. And so you don't need to know someone to allow them to come in your front door. But if you want to know what exactly that they want, you have to have a conversation.
Yep.
That's why we named our main platform is called Dialogue, because we're encouraging a dialogue with the platform so that the platform can understand what the user wants and then provide them with the experience that they deserve.
Yeah, and you said it, value exchange, right? It all comes down to the value exchange. There is different levels of value that you're going to get depending on the type of exchange. You can be very kind of easily kind of understood and addressed as a customer just by saying like, yep, I'm happy to come in and have ads and be recognized and have ads, but I'm not going to give you anything because I don't think it's worth it. And then over time, build a relationship that requires or that justifies more kind of the customers leaning in more and sharing more of its life and more of its data.
100%. And you see that, it's been very difficult for local broadcasters and local media to really engage because people are coming there quickly to get crime and weather, right? And so it's difficult to provide authentication when that's the only value exchange. I think as they get more, but on the other hand, if you look at companies like the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, News Corp, these are companies that have very strong relationships with their user base. And so a majority of those users log in.
Yep.
And so recreating that and starting with, we welcome you to our site. We want to give you the information. You don't need to give us our login the first time you visit or the second time, but maybe the third time or the fourth time, or if you're going someone 5 times a month, it's important to tailor the experience. And so that's where you get...
And you can still do that while being totally compliant with regulation. There is no obligation in the regulation to have users giving their email so that you can recognize them.
None whatsoever.
Right. That was a myth, people. So we've clarified that with Ben. Thank you very much, Ben, for your
Matthew.
For your participation. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You do not need people to log in to be able to recognize them. You need to engage in a discussion with them. You need them to agree to the value exchange, and then you can get from there. The more you know, the better. But there is a starting point that should be accessible to everybody. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.